Hello and welcome back. My name is Terry and this is Bucket Ponds. Today we are building a brand new Nano Aquarium, fully planted with microfauna, and I'm using material that I'm taking from this wild location. So this is very near to the Alapaha River in southern Georgia. I have a couple mason jars with me. I always have a couple. And we're going to take some samples from this location. First, over here near the highway, I'm going to get a little scoop of this interesting rainwater. We had a heavy rain right before this, and it looks like we have a lot of runoff here. For those of you interested in the spike rush, this is an example of wild spike rush. Yeah, the same plant I grow in the jars, just out here on the side of the road, minding its own business. uh, Not being noticed by anyone in particular, other than us, of course. But we're going to take a sample of this water, as I'm willing to bet there's some interesting microfauna in here. In particular, I'd like to catch some new aquatic worms. And I'd really love some aquatic isopods, but I don't think this is quite the right location for that. So we'll just take a scoop of this water. You never know what you might find. It's kind of fun. It's not quite like gambling. I don't want to say that, but it's just a shot in the dark and seeing what turns up. It is fun. I enjoy this a lot, and this is how I captured most of my species. Just go off into the woods and see what we can find. So we have a sample of water. We have one mason jar full of that rainwater. And I want to go a little further into the woods. You can see this area here is very near to the road, to the highway. A lot of big trucks come through here. They like to throw their trash out the window, as humans do, which is very unfortunate, as this area could be really nice and quite scenic and very attractive. I'd like to take some of this improvised driftwood home, as I'm sure it's loaded with interesting creatures, but I'm not quite equipped for that right now, so maybe another time. But let's turn around and head towards the wooded area, the tree line. Now, you guys, if you're doing this kind of stuff yourself, be very careful. Don't do it, I should say. But if you do go out wild collecting, maybe during a hike or something, be very careful not to be destructive of the location and, be mindful and respectful. Some places, they don't want you to take anything, and I can understand that. But this place here, no one cares about. No one bats an eye at this area, so they won't care what we do. We have a nice stream here forming from that rainwater runoff, but I believe that over here in the woods we'll have a lot more luck as we walk further from civilization, as we escape the influence of humanity. We will no doubt find more interesting creatures. And in fact, right here, we have a very specific type of moss. I can't tell you what kind, and it's obviously struggling a bit. It's not doing the greatest that it could be doing. But I'm going to take some, about 40% of this little batch. Always leave most of the moss. Don't be greedy. Don't take it all. Leave some for the next guy or for nature. But we'll take that moss with us, and we're going to venture a little further into the woods. I'm kind of following this rainwater, the stream, and oh my God, look at this, you guys. Oh my God. I do have to be careful and watch out for snakes and stuff. I did have to redub this audio because there were so many large vehicles moving around. There is a significant logging operation a few hundred feet off in that direction. But look at this, you guys. To me, this is paradise. This is where we are meant to be. I think there's something very special. And this particular location is beautiful. My God. I wish I had the original audio. You just listen to me. I'm like, they should have sent a poet. But I do love this place. I will come back here eventually. We're a little further off in the woods here, so hopefully no people will destroy this area or, pave it, turn it into a boat ramp or anything like that. As you can see, I do not have the proper footwear for such an adventure, so I have to be very careful. It's very easy to get hurt off here, out here in the woods. But we're going to take a sample of the substrate from this interesting vernal pool. wetlands, whatever you might want to call it. It's definitely not a vernal pool. I can tell by the roots of those trees. But we're going to pile in a bunch of substrate in here, and it's because I have a very specific idea in mind. We have one jar full of water and one jar full of substrate. So we're going to use these to build a brand new jar aquarium once we make it back to Bucket Pond's headquarters. We'll take this moss as well, and I'll see if I can't find something to do with that. If I had more time, I'm sure that we could find more interesting things out here. I even found a sweet gum seed pod. Check that out. Yeah, just laying here like it's meant to be. But if I had more time, I had to be pretty quick today. But if I did have more time, I'm sure that we could find a lot more stuff out here, you guys. Recently, I got a tip on what I believe was a 200-acre farm, a heavily wooded area, and a friend said that we may be able to come over and collect. They kind of invited us, which is really, really cool. And I'll probably be looking into that later this year. Very excited for 2025. I hope you are too. I know it's just a calendar and it's ultimately meaningless. But for the channel, for my plans this year, things that I want to do, goals that I have in mind, I'm very excited. So here we are back at headquarters. I got my Chewy hat on. That's right. Chewy even said that I could officially wear their hat during my videos. They gave it to me. So that's really cool. They're not really sponsoring us, but yeah, shout out to Chewy. Good stuff for pets. Great website. We have 2 jars and a chunk of moss. So there's our substrate jar. It kind of settled. We got a fair amount of water in here, but I don't see many microfauna. They're most likely mixed down there in those leaves and things. And there's a look at our water jar, which is actually far more active. I'll try not to bore you, but in here we have a lot of life. I see some copepods, some things that appear to be water mites, and possibly some other animals as well. Yeah, isn't that cool though? Chewy gave me permission to wear their logo on my videos, and we buy a lot of cat food and stuff from Chewy. We've rescued 5 cats, well, 6, 7, we'll say 5. But yeah, I think that's really cool. Thank you, Chewy. A big shout out. Here's a look at that moss that we found. It is in rough shape. You know, it's growing off in the woods, in the wild. That's okay. As long as there's a little bit of life in there, a few cells are still alive, then we can resurrect this moss. It's really cool how that works. So I'll use some of this off screen and we'll see if we can't get it to grow. But back here in the shop, in the fish room, we're looking at our jars and what we might have collected. Down here in the bottom of the water jar, we have a lot of action, you guys, a lot of activity. I see a lot of movement. I don't see any aquatic worms, and that's okay. Really, I should have brought maybe 5 or 6 sample containers with me. But, you know, sometimes you get inspired, you see a beautiful location, you got 2 mason jars in your backpack, you got to run over there and take some samples. That's how it is. So we're going to start with just dumping our substrate jar, our leaf and mud and whatnot container. We'll just dump that into this build here. You may recognize this jar as I've used a few of these on the channel. I got this for $4 at Dollar General. It's an okay jar. It's not the best. But there we are. We've added all of that substrate material, and now I'm going to add a piece of non-biodegradable screen mesh. Now, the mesh is not fine enough to prevent most of our microfauna from swimming through it, so hopefully they'll be okay in there. And I didn't see many in the substrate jar itself, so probably not too many different forms of life down in that leaf and mud stuff that we collected. Now I am adding some old aquarium gravel to help pin down that piece of screen mesh. My goal here is to kind of build like a Wallstad style tank using these wild materials, pinning them to the bottom and then removing most of this water. And we're basically doing a water change, you know. I'll be adding that murky water to another project just to make sure we don't lose any new captured microfauna. But now we are adding our jar of water that we collected. Just adding it all right into the tank here. It's going to be messy, but that's okay. It will settle. It'll be beautiful, trust me. And now we're going to add some fresh water. And again, I'm not being careful. I want to stir this stuff up. I want to make sure that we can get our new microfauna, swimming around the container, kind of get them disturbed a bit to then get them settled in, if that makes sense. But this jar will clear pretty quickly. And we're going to throw in that sweet gum seed pod that we found. And I found one in my backyard too. So we're going to throw that one in there as well. Yeah, it turns out I actually have my own sweet gum tree. I had no idea all these years. But now we do. Now we know. And there's probably a lot more of them around. Now, I didn't find any aquatic plants, so I am going to add some water spangles in here from another collection trip we did a while back. They've been easily growing among our other plants. It's a great species. I'm also going to add some spike rush taken from the top of one of our spike rush nurseries. Just throw that in there. And that's a fun plant, Either it succeeds and it goes wild, it goes crazy, or it fails. And even then, it doesn't die. It just kind of goes into stasis. It waits for the conditions to change. I do have a lid for this container. It's a Tupperware cup with a few little holes drilled in it for airflow. So it's not airtight. It's just there to prevent any flying insects from escaping the project. So here we are, about 1 day later, and I'll have to get my flashlight here for some supplementary lighting. But the tank doesn't look too bad. The spike rush is in here. It started to grow a bit, and our seed pods are still floating. Looking more closely, we see some copepods in here. And Cyclops, I believe, is the common name. And these little guys, they may be exciting to some, but I tend to have them in most of my projects, so they're just kind of normal. I'm kind of used to them. I hate to be like that, but yeah, to me, copepods are just part of life. They're just in our aquariums, and they're fun and they are interesting, but not necessarily my focus for this project. Instead, we're looking for what else we may have captured, and I might have infected this wild sample aquarium with those water spangles with my own microfauna. They may have hitchhiked on the water spangles. It's very possible. Uh, yeah. My goal was to build this in like a disconnected way away from my pets just to see what we captured. But if we did happen to infiltrate this aquarium, it's okay. It's fine. I'm not running any lab tests. I'm not, some scientist writing a white paper. It's fine. But I do see that the spike rush is established in here, and I see some larger animals in there swimming around as well. I know there are at least a couple diving beetles, but they are very, very elusive. Small diving beetles, not the big sunburst ones or anything like that. Looking more closely, the spike rush is doing great, actually. And this stuff grows pretty quickly. So once it gets established, if it's happy, you could say, if the spike rush is happy with the conditions in the aquarium, it will grow very rapidly. So it looks like it's starting to do that now, but it's still getting established as well. It takes time. It's only been about 24 hours since I threw it in the tank here. And here we are. Yes, this is almost a week later, and the jar looks amazing. Spike rush has definitely started to grow. It's branching out. There's a lot more in here than when I first added it to the tank. Our seed pods are sunk, and they should provide interesting habitat and food source for our microfauna. Now, I'm not going to be too specific in this video because I'm always second guessing my species identifications when running these projects. But I do believe that we have Daphnia in here. And I think this would be an example of some right here. I'm not quite sure though. I see two very distinct things, two different types of life. And I know this is not the best shot, but we make do with what equipment we have. And they happen to be at a weird bend in the glass up here near the water spangles. But if you look closely, those little bivalve things, and there are some other little creatures next to them. So I think that we have Daphnia in here. We've captured something else as well, and yeah, I can't tell for sure what they are. So I do apologize for this shot. I know it's not the best. I will get a new camera one day. But check out this next shot right here. Yeah, so that's a Daphnia, I'm pretty sure. This is my microscope that I believe Tony from Phillips Fishworks sent to us a long time ago. I've never used it on the channel. It's a little bit finicky to get my camera mounted up to it properly, but I have been using it off screen quite a bit, and I enjoy it so much. Thank you. I don't know if I ever said thank you. But this is definitely a Daphnia, as far as I can tell. My limited research and training leads me to believe that this is Daphnia. I also asked the YouTube members in a community post, and they agreed with me. So I think that's what we're looking at here. I felt really bad taking this creature out of the aquarium and putting it on a microscope slide just to watch it struggle like this. I don't know. I have a big heart. I can't hurt things, you know. I'd rather not, anyway. But rest assured, it went right back into the tank. The lid is completely clean and comes right off very easily. I know it looks a little funny to have a hat sitting on top of a jar like this, but those lids are very effective. Um, I have been looking for alternatives. I'm trying to find a lid with a light built in or to make one myself. So, yeah, I'm always innovating, even in small ways, you know, doing my best to find new ideas and new items that we can use. Now, here we are, a little bit over a week later, and the jar is definitely changing. It's very interesting. I don't see many small creatures on the seed pods as I had expected to see. Generally, people say that you should probably boil these or something, I'm sure, but I just throw them right into the tank. It's not a big deal, especially with a wild culture like this. You know, if things go wrong, oh well, it's unfortunate. But look at the tank, you guys. It's beautiful. I'm really happy with it. But seeing those Daphnia in here, that gives me a big idea. And we're going to have to feed the aquarium. So I'm adding a slice of cucumber. This is their first real food source. And I'm going to add something else as well. As you may or may not know, I am kind of a green water guy. Yeah. So there's some green water from one of the 5-gallon green water aquariums. And this stuff is very dense. It's very powerful. I'm not using a strain that I purchased from eBay or something. You know, I'm using real green water cultured from swamp samples many years ago. And we're going to inject some water from the tank into the green water culture. And then we're going to take some of that green water and inject it into the tank. If I captured some Daphnia and injected them in here on accident, I'm sure they'll do well and possibly set up a backup culture for us. But check that out, you guys. Look at that green hue just flowing into the tank. I think that's so beautiful. Speaking with you guys, you know, I've seen quite a few comments like, I can't grow green water. Like, how do you do it? And I think that's really strange. Here I'm using some very concentrated green water to add even more material to the tank, even more algae. And you might be saying, like, wow, you've ruined that cool aquarium. You've turned it green. Well, it's for a good reason. I hope that the Daphnia will eat that green water. And so here we are about 10 days after infecting the tank with green water algae. And it's completely clear once again. Yeah. Now there is some green mucky stuff that's on every surface in the tank, even the plants. And I believe that's actually digested green water algae. I think that's waste from our Daphnia and our other pets. No doubt, if they eat algae, they have to excrete certain materials afterwards. So, yeah, it looks bad, but if I go in there and I were to, you know, flow the water around, you know, blow some water around, then it would most likely clear up and that stuff would fall to the bottom. But I'm not too worried about it. I think it looks very natural and interesting. Now, up here near the surface, I do see what appears to be our larger ostracods. I believe they have infected this aquarium because I did not see them at first. So it looks like a little bit of bucket ponds snuck into this project, and that's okay. We love our giant ostracods, whatever you want to call them. They are just part of my species now. They are my chosen variety for ostracods, and they do very well. So it's okay to see them in here. I don't mind. They want to make the leap into infecting a new world, like that's cool to me. But what's of particular interest to me are these little orbs floating around down here. They seem to be struggling to swim. They don't seem to swim very well. You'll see those little circular guys kind of bobbing up and down as they head towards the top of the tank, and I believe those are the Daphnia, or a type of Daphnia. Those larger bivalve creatures, they seem to have disappeared, which is unfortunate. Maybe they did not agree with my methods, my water parameters. Something in here did not agree with them. That's okay. Maybe we'll go back and take some samples again in the near future. But here's a look at our ostracods and copepods, and you can even see a few of those little spherical, interesting animals kind of darting up and down as they flow towards the top of the tank as they swim. And I cannot get them into focus. Something about either this jar, my camera, or a combination of the two, I cannot get anything to focus up here near the water level. And that's unfortunate. But just looking at the tank, it is full of life, you guys. We have cultured quite a few different organisms from those wild samples. And I think that's really cool. Just the act of taking some mud and taking some water, putting that together intentionally, and building an aquarium out of it, I think it's really cool. And yeah, I'm actually pretty happy with what we've ended up here, you know? But this has all been kind of there's a planarian there to the left. But this is kind of a run up to an idea that our good buddy Clay suggested, one of the unstoppable YouTube members. Thank you, Clay. But he suggested that we should build a ecosphere, or even two of them, and to compare the different methods. Usually when I build an ecosphere, I purpose build it. I set it up in a very intentional way with certain plants and animals trying to establish a long-term ecosystem. But many others, when they build an ecosphere, they'll take a scoop of water with some mud or whatever, and they'll close it up and they'll study it and consider that a sealed ecosphere, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And Clay suggested that we try to do both and compare both of those tanks. So this is kind of a run up, trying to build up to that in my own mind. And, I think we've built a really cool, wild, yet semi-intentional jar aquarium here. And I think that we could build something like this into an ecosphere in the future. And, guys, I'm just having a lot of fun here. Again, I know the tank looks a little weird, but if I were to, blow some bubbles around in there with my injector, it would clear that stuff up, I'm pretty sure. But as it is, I don't want to infect the tank with any of my other species just yet. Now, you guys, you will see quite a few mentions of this wild jar aquarium. That's what I'm calling it. You will see this mentioned in some of my other videos that are coming up and that have recently been uploaded, as I am taking samples from this project and using it to infect my own aquariums, to try to culture those little Daphnia and to raise more of them, get them established elsewhere, because they seem to like green water, and oh boy, do I have a lot of green water to give them. So if you made it this far into the video, I am impressed. I am very proud of you. Thank you for watching. Big thank you to my YouTube members and Patreon supporters as well. You guys are awesome. And really, the whole community. I want to make sure that all of you feel included. Your voices are heard. You are part of the Bucket Ponds family just by watching these videos. And I'm just very grateful. I'm happy to be here with you, and I hope that you have a great day. I'll have another video up about this tank soon.